Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's now 4 minutes past 4 South African time in the afternoon. Welcome and thank you very much for attending our webinar this afternoon, which is titled The Data Revolution, Digital Twin and Other Smart Technologies, which is brought to you by the SAICE Information Technology Division. Before we begin, I'd like to give you a very quick overview of the SAICE IT division. So the focus of the division is to add value to educating our industry on new technologies, new developments, for example, Fourth Industrial Revolution, artificial intelligence, BIM, cloud collaboration, Internet of Things, both from a hardware, software, and human perspective, and to reimagine our workflows through 2022 and beyond. So at the division, we have three objectives. So we seek to expose new technologies that may be useful to the civil engineering profession, particularly as the traditional boundaries between engineering disciplines are becoming increasingly fluid. We seek to serve our members by providing relevant content timelessly, always taking into account the members' needs. And thirdly, to attract more professionals into the industry, particularly by encouraging young and older professionals to become aware of new technologies, whilst maintaining regard to the social, environmental, and economic impact of those technologies. So a bit of housekeeping before we begin. Please type any questions that you may have into the Q&A. Not into the chat, because if you put them in the chat, we may not see them in the Q&A. So during the presentation, you can just type them in, and after the presentation, we will have a bit of time to go through some of those questions and hopefully give you some answers. With regard to EXA CPD points, EXA is currently redoing the CPD system, which I've just heard, I believe is now just started up and running the new system. So obviously there's going to be a bit of delay in getting webinars accredited, but it will now begin, and there's a bit of a backlog. So don't expect your CPD accreditation number to come through tomorrow. It will take a bit of time as we play a bit of catch up with the new EXA system. So with the intro done, now I'd like to introduce our speaker for this afternoon. Well, our speaker is William Jones. We call Bill Jones affectionately. Bill is actually coming from us from the other side of the world today. He's sitting in Vancouver, which is North America, and he is the Vice President, Smart Technologies and Innovation for Intervistas Consulting, Inc. Now, Bill has a diploma in engineering geology from Liverpool University, and he's also a certified Microsoft professional. I'll give you sort of a bit more background to Bill. Well, Bill's an experienced technology and infrastructure specialist in the built environment and has experience in IT architecture, civil engineering, conceptual and detailed design, and engineering geology. He has experience in solutions relating to transport, structures, planning, project, and facilities management. He's got over 25 years of experience managing information systems from inception to ongoing life cycle management. He has led numerous IT solution development projects, which include smart infrastructure, digital transformation initiatives, and digital design. Linked to this, he also focuses on IT compliance and security in the enterprise. For the last 20 years, he has held Chief Information Officer and Chief Technical Officer positions in global companies, as well as managing interfaces between leading technology providers, management consultants, and stakeholders. Now, so his project experience crosses many industry sectors from infrastructure development, aviation, smart buildings, and facilities. To give you an idea of some of the recent projects, include the detailed design of an 88,000 square meter corporate head office for a large oil and gas company in Central Europe. Now, 88,000 square meters, about the area of Chicago's Millennium Park, so this is big. Key aspects of this development include developing a conceptual BIM-based digital twin integrated into a data lake, leveraging all building services to manage the building infrastructure with the ability of the building to adjust to end user systems in the smart workplace. The different project teams worked on a common platform based on agreed standards to ensure detailed design work could be built to build the building's digital twin. So Bill has also recently contributed to some publications, one being the ACRP 0355, titled Airport Biometrics, a primer. He's also part of a team carrying out research for a future publication, that's Airport Blockchain Implementation Guidebook. So we've got a very interesting speaker here this afternoon. And so Bill, welcome from Vancouver. And thank you very much for getting up early. It's our afternoon, but it's early in the morning for you. And we do appreciate that. And so I'd like to hand over to you to take us through your presentation. Thank you, Bill.
Thanks very much, Peter. Well, so it's good morning from me and good afternoon to you. I am sitting here in Vancouver, which of course is 9 hours behind South Africa. Some of you in the call will probably know me. I have actually spent most of my working life in South Africa, and I joined what is now known the Royal Haskoning DHV group of companies in 1987 in the structures side of the business at that time. And in 2019, I took an opportunity to move to North America and work with our aviation sector here in North America, across the United States and Canada. The name of the company here in Canada and the US is called Intervista Consulting, but of course is part of the larger RHDHV group. So today I'd like to take you through a presentation. I'm not going to focus on particular brands or anything like that. I'm going to share some of the things that I've experienced along the roadmap of working with technology in an engineering space. Some of the major changes that have happened along the way. I think we cannot underestimate the impact of COVID-19, the pandemic, not only in the fact that so many people have lost their lives and also had hardships placed upon them, but also it has actually given the technology space and the way we use technology a great amount of impetus and moving it on, where we have tended to be sometimes rather conservative in trying new things. It is certainly a time in our lives where technology is starting to be trusted, and we are starting to see major returns on efforts that very creative people work together with across society to deliver the solutions that work and make a difference. Okay, so in the presentation, what I would like to just focus on is that when I started out thinking about this presentation, within the IT committee, I was asked in 2019 to do a presentation on smart buildings. And at the time I was working on the building that Peter referred to. And over time, some 3 years later, a lot has happened. And I decided, rather than talk about smart buildings, rather talk about the data revolution. And the reason for that is it's become more and more clearer that you cannot run technology solutions in isolation. And even though we collect lots of data, we don't necessarily use it to the best of its ability. And sometimes we collect the wrong data. So quite often referred to as information overload. It's really a case of now focusing on what data you and your business, or in your operation you need to use, but also to ensure that you are using the right technologies. And there's lots of technologies out there, and sometimes that makes it even more confusing. So in this presentation, I'm going to go through what is driving digital change. There is, of course, due to that, there is a change. Then there's certain tools in what I call the toolbox that you can select from. And there are so many, I can only touch on a few today. And then, of course, some of the pitfalls or the opportunities of using tools and working together. And then just talking about some of the companies of what they have achieved by using digital, and then focusing on one particular company that has actually taken nearly all these technologies and used them to their benefit. All right, so moving along, the most important thing is what is driving digital change. And of course, with the pandemic, it is quite obvious that companies have had to transform a lot quicker than they may have anticipated. And it's become, for a lot of companies, a matter of survival. There is also at a time in our lives where if you want to survive, you also have to implement new technologies to your organization. You can't stay with what you've had for the last 20 years or stay on a version of software that is no longer supported. If you want to start integrating, you have to come to the party and come onto the world stage. But in saying that, digital change doesn't lead to ultimate immediate success. There are pitfalls along the way. And one of the key things that you need to consider is that best practices are not there just for you to read about, but they're also there to apply. And then, of course, the most important thing is digital transformation isn't something that you just start and finish. It actually evolves. So it's a journey. And if you want to get the most out of your business through digital change, I would say start small, have some quick wins, and then keep on moving. Okay, so I've used the word digital transformation. This is a word that is too often said in meetings that we do digital transformation. If you don't do digital transformation, you are not going to succeed in what you're trying to achieve. Sometimes used far too easily. But one of the most important parts, or probably the most critical thing in any digital transformation, is the human element. Humans are the core to make these changes. And we need to make sure that we treat our most important asset to this whole process with the care, dedication, and let's just use the word, the love they deserve. We need to empower our employees. We need to explain the organizational changes. We need to upskill them. Too often people read the word new skills, that we're going to get rid of a whole lot of people and bring in new people. Over time, new skills come in, but we also need to focus on those who are currently in our organizations and who are really working for the benefit of the organization, to actually help them along the way to change as well. And of course, having a healthy organizational culture and open communication. I cannot stress, communication is probably, after the employee, the most important thing. As I alluded to in the first slide, digital transformation as a roadmap is not a race, but a journey. But what you have to do is, it's not a never-ending story that doesn't have goals and things to achieve. The best practices include, if you're going to start or you're in the process of digital transformation, if you haven't got executive buy-in, you're really going to battle. But in saying that, buy-in doesn't mean getting an approved budget. Buy-in means actually keeping the executive engaged during the whole process. Communication paramount, because it also aligns all the employees. You also need to create a sense of urgency. And you need to understand the culture and the employee experience. I cannot stress enough is that we have people in our organizations that come from different times in our lives. Some come from the 50s, some come from the 60s, and so on. And we all handle technology differently. Some better than others. There are some who were born in the 50s that are experts in technologies, but there are some that may need a helping hand also in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and even in the centuries we work in today. We need to support the culture of innovation, not just talk about it. We need to eliminate fear. And as I said earlier, we need to make sure that we get the skills that we need from within, but also outside in the market. Break down the silos and encourage knowledge sharing. And of course, if you're going to do digital transformation, it's a good idea to actually engage with your customers and your business partners, because ultimately it has an impact on them as well. And of course, you also have to look at what drives your information technology. There are operational efficiencies that you wish to realize, and there could be some major changes in what you have in place today. Okay, so what has changed? A lot of people will say that digital transformation was on the agenda or was being done long before COVID. I think why I mention COVID here is that it has actually realized digital transformation is something that actually happens every day we live on this planet. And that businesses had to look very critically at the way they were to survive during the pandemic. Just from a typical employee, where we were all sent home wherever we were in the world to work in a home office rather than actually trundling to work every day, seeing everybody face to face. If you think back at that time and you think where you are today, you would probably give yourself a pat on the back, because I think the human being is a very resilient being. And at the end of the day, I think we are a lot stronger in the use of technology, thanks to the so-called pandemic with all its negatives. It has forced change, and it is forcing changes, and customers are expecting new experiences. If you look at the retail space and the way that when everybody went into lockdown, how quickly that had to react to provide people with new experiences, to be able to do the things they took for granted. This is a good example of digital transformation. And I think when we move into after COVID, I think there's a couple of things that we need to realize if we don't know that already. I think one of the things that comes to top of mind has got to be employee experience has become a key theme in the HR community. The relationships with IT departments, which have been strained across the years for various reasons, is moving into positive territory. Vast portions of our workforce are remote. And I think the bottom line there is that the employee experience has gone from a nice to have to the only way to get work done. And you can see that in an argument when you start asking people to return to the office on a 5 days a week basis. A lot of companies have had to increase their support tools, automation tools to provide resilience, because it wasn't possible for people to sit in call centers in the same number of volumes and answered calls. Things like also looking at what you had in your business. Did you need it any longer? Could you actually remove certain things? I think one of the things with some automated tools is the infamous chatbot, which you either love it or you hate it. And I think that's a very good thing to say about chatbots and digital transformation. It's not a case of creating a chatbot and expecting it to learn, unless you've still got to keep on nurturing it and building it to offer a lot more than a lot of them do today. But one mindset that has changed is that we have tended to be cautious when rolling out new systems. We always want them to be perfect, but there is definitely a time now where systems need to be good. Yes, they will not fit everything immediately, but over time, they can change, they can rebuild. And I think something like some of these collaboration platforms, like the one we're using today, if you look at how those have advanced in the time that we've had to use them every day of our lives, just to actually survive and keep ourselves and our businesses running. So after digital transformation, we talk about things like, what are the examples? I mentioned digital twin in the title, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, analytics and big data, biometrics and blockchain. Now, those are two technologies, in which Peter also alluded to in the introduction, that I personally have been involved in the last 3 years, and have found those technologies to be complementary in so many of the digital solutions that we need to actually drive our businesses and our projects forward. That is just a selection, but in saying that, other technology examples are cloud, robotics, mobile, additive manufacturing, which is also known as 3D printing, the different realities, and things like drones. Okay, you will be receiving this presentation, so I'm not going to go through everything in a lot of detail. I'm also mindful of the time that we have. One of the things that has always excited me, having started in structures, was the use of an electronic system, which in my day and age, was the early days of the Autodesk version 9. And of course, you can see how packages like that and from other vendors have moved into really an amazing space. One of the things that has been driven, of course, in society has been the creation of a digital twin. And of course, it's really a visual representation of an object or a system that spans the life cycle of a product and is updated in real time. And it can use simulation, machine learning, reasoning to help decision making. Now, when you look at these different technologies that I mentioned on the previous slide, these are all the things that make up and can be used in a digital twin. The digital twin uses real-time world data, and that is one of the real business benefits to a client if you can actually help them predict on a product they have or a process. Digital twin benefits with the integration with technologies like the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and software analytics, which you need to actually enhance the output. But please remember, the digital twin comes in different shapes and sizes. There are some digital twins that are just made by using a data lake. And you can imagine that certain providers of databases, this is the area of digital twins they focus on. Then you look at the graphical design companies that can offer things like BIM. That is another platform for digital twin. And the project that I've spoke about of a smart building in Europe, what that was basically the whole design process was done with all the different disciplines working on one model. And ultimately, due to the fact, and you learn these in these projects, that what you need to do is actually to get your team and agree a strategy prior to even opening the first or drawing the first line in the model. Because if you don't, when you start getting to where you want to break out and do other things with this model, you find that you have the certain limitations because you haven't actually set your parameters and your foundation clearly. When we come to digital twins, where have digital twins made a difference? They originally came to fame within the automotive and aerospace industries, but they have now expanded into the supply chain, architecture, civil engineering, construction, healthcare, etc. But one of the most important things, and I've already actually made reference to this, is the digital twin is made up of building blocks. And it gets more complicated as you bring more and more people or systems or stakeholders in. So one digital twin working with another digital twin becomes the norm. But one of the most important things in any solution, whether it's in a BIM model, whether it's in a data lake, in some sort of database, is that data is king. And we need to also develop a strategy in what we actually are going to use, what we need, what we already capture, and of course the more difficult one is that what do we need to capture to meet the business requirement that we've motivated for. And of course, this normally comes with an added expense. Okay, just in the interest of time. But of course, digital twins are not everything all in one box. It's like so many of these technologies, you have to actually bring them together. But there are some actual criteria that you need to understand. Digital twins can either be an asset twin, which associates data and documents to asset models, allowing operational teams to use different applications to manage and control assets. That is quite a typical one that you see in the industry. The operational one is the integration of asset twins and different process models with multiple data sources to deliver a platform for decision support applications. And then, of course, there's the predictive one that uses and assesses and optimizes design and delivery. And of course, ultimately, it can also be used to train other models. But yet again, a lot of people get hung up and say, okay, a digital twin, I just put some IoT stuff into it and I get some data and I have a digital twin. IoT devices are very, very important, specifically in manufacturing, certainly in a building or a facility. But you need to have good governance. And one of the most important things is you need to, and this needs to be done up front, you need to have technology excellence and how you organize yourselves. Also, okay. So, Internet of Things. I think Internet of Things is quite often not appreciated. We are already exposed to them on a daily basis. They're in your homes. They're in the watch you have. Certainly if you have a fitness tracker. But in saying that, things like wearables have really taken the industries by storm, in that they've taken a traditional alarm clock or a wristwatch and they've turned them into microcomputers that you use day in and day out. But of course, taking this to a wider picture, things like smart cities through proper connections, not what we've realized today, are there if you start enhancing and using this data to solve traffic congestion, reduce noise, crime, parking, pollution. There's lots of examples. And then, of course, things are also evolving around us. Just think about the connected car and what your car did 20 years ago and what it can do today. But also the ability through internet access to share access with others. If you think of ride schemes where you can go and pick up a car at the side of the road, rent it for a couple of hours or for 30 minutes to get you from A to B. That gives you the power of having a IoT device sitting in a car that can be shared. And then, of course, there's added things like security, unlocking, remote start. To a lot of people in South Africa, possibly remote start wouldn't be that so important, and probably may not fit in with some of the security risks that you deal with. But here in a country where you have temperatures below freezing, starting your car in the garage while you're having your breakfast adds value, and of course provides a service. Other things, of course, are artificial intelligence, something that a lot of the time, yet again, a bit of a buzzword. But artificial intelligence is really the place where you can actually start using and benefiting from the data you collect. A lot of this, of course, it's broken into 4 examples. Reactive. We talk that IBM quite often still talks about their computer taking on the world chess champion. The spam filters that protect you from some of your email, they're not foolproof. They're reactive. And of course, if you subscribe to something like Netflix, it also has the ability to start recommending things that you like by what you viewed. And then, of course, there's things like limited memory, autonomous vehicles, which use historical information and observational information. So that allows them to be able to drive and react on a roadway. Then, of course, we get into two areas that are a little bit more further away. They call the theory of mind. A robot head was created, which was able to recognize the emotion on a human being's face and respond and react accordingly. And then, of course, the one that is really still to be seen in our world is self-aware. It is also one of the reasons this is not really developing and visible as much as it could be, is due to computer and hardware limitations. But that will ultimately allow something to be aware of emotions, of mental states, and also be able to respond to it. But that is something down the line. Analytics and big data. If you have data, you want to get the best out of it. It's there to help you so you can see insight, see meaningful data so that you can act upon it. But of course, yet again, you could be looking for different things. So you could be looking for descriptive, which will tell us what has happened. You could be looking at predictive, what could happen, or prescriptive, what are the future outcomes. So basically, there on the slide, it just gives you a couple of examples. Descriptive, something like Netflix or Starbucks, which is across the world. So what you want, where you want it, and when you want it. That's what Starbucks use analytics for. Predictive, performance monitoring. So when it comes to, let's say, equipment maintenance, weather forecast, everybody gets that, looks at that every day, I think. And then, of course, things like the unfortunate COVID-19 pandemic. And then, of course, the people, the financial planners, they look at prescriptive. The banks look at fraud. And of course, people who are trying to sell you things use email and automated marketing. Two subjects that I added into this. One is biometrics. And one of the reasons for that is that a lot of the data that we collect and the systems we use calls for you as a person to remember lots of usernames, passwords. And at the end of the day, if we could use biometrics, there are unique things that are unique to you. And that could actually make us going through this world a lot easier, using some of the characteristics that you have on your person as a human being. And types of biometrics are iris, facial recognition, 3D and hand and finger geometry, and then, of course, DNA matching. And that depends on the type of application. So what could biometrics do for you in delivering a solution? So if you were in the retail game, it offers great benefits in a retail experience. It also improves and fast tracks when using an improved security solution. Rather than coming in to a building and using a swipe card in your everyday office or using a fingerprint reader, why can't biometrics be used to give you access to where you are allowed to get to in a building? Health passports, of course, became very, very important during the pandemic, and patient confidentiality is another important thing. Biometrics also protects your privacy and your private data, which leads to returning the data that is yours to you to control, rather than everything you do or get asked or apply for, you have to give them every little bit of information. With biometrics, you give them what is only needed. And then, of course, it's a seamless way of working with national and regional departments. If you look at working with a passport office or in the case of South Africa, an ID book, of physically linking the two together with one biometric. And then, of course, we all travel. The benefits of biometrics, of using it when you have you're going on holiday or going on business, a seamless passenger journey that improves customer experience. Just an example, if you go to Dubai International, they are trialing a walk-through tunnel that addresses the immigration and the security aspect. You start at one end and you keep on walking until you get to the other end. And provided that you pass the relevant criteria, you then carry on to your gate or to your lounge or whatever. There is no longer a situation of going through multiple processes in multiple queues. But there are some challenges with biometrics. And it's very important to realize is that IT architecture does face some challenges because there is a lot more stakeholders involved. Interoperability and scalability can be a problem. And when you are working with stakeholders that could be across different countries with different privacy laws, you need to consider that when you design your solution. Another one which is, to a certain extent, probably misunderstood a lot of the time, blockchain. There's a lot of hype in the media. There's a lot of negativity in the media. And a lot of the time, blockchain is labeled incorrectly. It's a technology that really, if you want to do business with an untrusted party, or you want to connect your business to other businesses so you can actually have a more efficient way of working in a process and taking away duplication and paper, blockchain is a component that you should consider. But there are two types of blockchains. There is what we call private permission, and then there is public permissionless. The private one is normally what a company will use to actually work with a set of companies that they need to work together with, where there are controls, where there are rules, and there is governance to ensure that people provide only what they need to. Because one thing you need to realize about blockchain, once the data is in a block, it cannot be removed. So it's there ad infinitum. The one that gets a lot of noise in the market, of course, is public permissionless blockchains, and that's the cryptocurrencies. And it's very important not to be weighed down by the problems of cryptocurrencies when wishing to use blockchain in a solution. Why use blockchain? It offers trust between all participants. It has visibility and traceability, certainly good when you want to track items and confirm if they're legitimate. It has security and privacy, because records can't be altered and thus reducing fraud, etc. It's decentralized, so you can have people not even connected to your physical network still interacting with the chain through different nodes, and every person in this makeup is a node, and a stakeholder will have a node to operate through. It improves performance because you remove duplication and replacing of conventional methods. you control your data better, and you only share the data you need to. And of course, there is the benefit of a cost reduction, provided you get it right, reducing manual tasks, improving reporting, and of course, adhering to compliance. One of the most misunderstood things about blockchain is a lot of people think you can go out and just buy it off the shelf. It's a technology. It's not a piece of software. It works within a system, and it complements other systems by pulling data from them or sending data back. So as we look back at some of the things that I've discussed this morning or this afternoon, what are the things that come to mind to make digital transformation work together? Digital transformation is driven by the use of digital technology. In the world we live in today, single digital technology seldom stands on its own. It needs to be supported by other pieces of technology. If you want to get into digital transformation, you may be doing it, but the best way to do it is to start with some uncomplicated solutions and provide a simpler way to market. Please be aware, and I said this up front, digital solutions do fail. A decent business case is required. These things cost money, so you need to actually provide what the benefits are going to be and stick to them. Start small, grow into bigger things. This is not a quick fix. Keep an open mind about. Too often you hear in discussions in digital transformation about, no, you can't do that. You sometimes have to completely take your foot out of the past and step into some middle ground so that you can move into the future. A fear of digital transformation is the loss of jobs, especially when people start talking about robotics. But in saying that, in some cases, it has been proved, and it is visible that robotics actually bring more efficiencies and grow business to bring more, to retrain those people and get them to do different jobs that add value to their business and the enterprise. If you want to do digital transformation, one of the major components is you need to be in the cloud. You don't have to be entirely in the cloud, but the cloud makes it a lot easier. And of course, at the end of the day, you need to find the right vendors and the partners that suits your business. I think one of the important things is that digital transformation does bring fear, and it does have day-to-day hiccups. But companies that look beyond these challenging aspects of transformation will leap past the competition. So when things get tough, you've got to keep on going. So what are some of the digital success stories? A lot of those names on the screen are household names in South Africa, with the exception of somebody like Walmart. SAB Miller, one of the finest brewers in the world, of course now owned by Anheuser-Busch. They have actually implemented a digital blockchain across the world where they physically track each farmer that provides hops to their breweries using a blockchain to physically track the product, where it is in the brewing process, and also ultimately to control the billing and payment of the farmers. This is right across the globe. Starbucks I've already spoken about, where they use things to find out where you are, etc. and what you want. McDonald's have used digital technology to improve voice recognition at drive-throughs. And then, of course, there's traditional things that we all use in our everyday lives. Rideshare companies. There are numerous of them across the world. Taxi organizations have had to evolve into similar mechanisms that rideshare companies use. Banking. I think one of the things in South Africa that is really leading edge, and I see that being here in North America, is that the banking in South Africa is actually world-class and leading. Airlines, airports, all have digital solutions. And of course, there is move to use things like digital twins, whether they are virtual digital twins, which are more graphical, where they're using them to predict traffic movements on the apron, also traffic flows, and they're also using them for training and learning in an actual virtual space. And of course, travel I've alluded to. Motor manufacturers were the first to jump into things like digital twins, using blockchain, using even biometrics. And of course, last but not least, is a company by the name of Amazon. And this is a company that, of course, is a totally digital company in concept. But of course, it is not coming to market with a lot of legacy systems. But in saying that, they have a very interesting model, and it actually leads the way for others to possibly follow and consider. Even though some of these products are not global as yet, they have some very interesting technologies which are completely driven by analytics and data processing to understand what every aspect of their business is doing. There are things like Amazon 4-star, which is basically taking a shop that's online and putting the most important things, the top sellers, on the street that people walk past when they go shopping or on the days they go to work. Amazon Books, not only do they sell books, they sell a whole lot of things that you can buy online. But the two that really are interesting here are Amazon Go and Amazon Go Groceries. This is the first range of shops where you enroll with Amazon and you physically walk into the shop. There is not a till or anything. You pick up, you put it in a basket, you walk out, put it in your bag, and as you walk through the exit to the shop, there is either a palm reader or a touchpad. Palm readers, of course, are far more desirable today because you don't actually have to put your palm onto a surface. And your credit card or your debit card is debited. So in saying that, it is basically, you talk to no one, you make your selection, and you basically walk out the shop. But of course, Amazon has got such a wide portfolio. They also earn their stripes with technology in their warehousing, because they have some of the most sophisticated warehousing in the world that is intelligent. And it uses things like self-driving cars in there to move stuff between pallets. And of course, it's driven by their Amazon Web Services, which drives also their retail. They're a tech company, but they have actually maximize the ability to interact with us as consumers. The big difference with Amazon is that they have a very broad product range. They have an obsession with customers, and sometimes I think some of us get annoyed by how obsessive they are when they actually send us so much information that sometimes that we really, enough is enough. They have highly competitive pricing. But the most important thing here in this Amazon ecosystem is they have fewer technology and organization silos. And that's one of the most important things of digital transformation, is to make sure that you do not have separate aspects of your business that cannot benefit from this transformation. Okay, so that's all I've got to share with you today. Every single one of those subjects, you could actually do a 1 or 1.5 hour presentation on and drill down in detail. So there is a bit of an introduction, a slice through them rather quickly, but I do hope that that has given you some background to some of the things that are happening out there in the world we live in. Thank you very much for your time and for listening.
Thank you, Bill. That was really excellent overview there of the data revolution and digital twins and smart technologies. We can now, if you'd like, people would like to ask questions, you can just put them in the Q&A. I see we have, in fact, a couple of questions in there from Chris. So Chris says, AI facial recognition is notoriously bad for non-Caucasian faces because it has been badly trained. Is this likely to be resolved in the near future?
Okay, so I fully concur with the question and the problem that arises. Facial technology does have some limitations at this moment in time, and what is very important is that it is a technology that is being advanced, and there is a lot of research into it, because it is actually one of the things that is being held back in regards to biometrics. But in saying that, I think one of the most important things that we need to never lose sight of is that we have all these technologies, but we also have habits as human beings, in that if something does not actually work from a technology aspect, you've got to have a get out of jail free plan. You've got to have another option. And whether I always look at these things like the little old lady who doesn't have a cell phone, but she still needs to interact with her bank. You have to make sure that the technology does not become a hindrance, and have sufficient redundant technology to back up when this occurs. I fully accept that some of scanning technology is not at the level it should be, but where it is being used currently, we have found the reliability is increasing on an ongoing basis. I hope that answers the question for the moment.
Thanks, Bill. Also, another question, in fact, from Chris. How is the security going to impact on the effectiveness of digital transformation? Hacking stories seem to dominate the news.
That is a very good question, and one that I could have probably put 29 slides into this presentation with. Cybersecurity is one of the most critical aspects of any digital transformation when it comes to actually the design and the implementation. Cybersecurity is something that we cannot take lightly. It's not going to go away, and it is changing every day. One of the biggest findings, though, is not necessarily the technology, it's the way we use it, and also some of the ways we actually get information into our systems, where there is a deficiency and the security is not applied as it should. So a lot of the hacking stories are out there. They will remain, just like anything. But in saying that, the best way to get around this, of course, is by ensuring that you have a solid cybersecurity for the technology, but also for cybersecurity for your business as a whole, working with numerous systems. The weakest link is the thing that ultimately can actually cause a hack and get you into trouble and get you into the press.
Thanks, Bill. Next question we have from Indomiso. He's saying, insightful presentation. Do we have South African local examples for public infrastructure projects or asset management organizations that have successfully adopted the use of digital twins?
I have to say there, on a immediate response to that, I don't have that information at my fingertips, but it is something that we can actually reach out and give some further feedback after this presentation. But I think when it comes to things like asset management on infrastructure problems, there is definitely an opportunity to use different types of digital twin solutions to physically manage assets. And of course, it all depends on the level of asset you want to manage. If you were to look at an airport and you wanted to carry things like a security entrance or runway lights or whatever, those are, you could use a virtual digital twin to do that. But if you now get into a building which could be public infrastructure building, and you want to actually control the assets in there, and also life cycle maintenance of the asset, then you need to go to a more structured digital twin. And I would normally recommend for this something coming out of ultimately a BIM model, but then of course using something like a data lake. But I'm sure that we can find some examples that could answer this question a little bit more clearer, and then provide to this group after the presentation.
Thanks, Bill. Next question we have from Peter is about security. What measures are taken that false firms use the technology where items are ordered by the public in good faith, not knowing that a firm might be false and money is wasted? If you can see that question, Bill, do you want me to read it again?
Yes, sorry, no, I'm just reading it. I'm just
having a think,
trying to just digest it. I think at the end of the day is that a lot of the issues that we have with things like false firms or false identities, which can be typically triggered through things like phishing and stuff like that. It's really a case of being streetwise, but it's also a case of being very careful of your information and knowing full well that who you are trying to interact with. Websites do come and go that are there to trap you, but I think at the end of the day is that that's going to exist whether you're using technology or whether you're buying a something that is a copy of something that we find people duplicating products and selling them under the same same label, or appears to be the same label. So I think at the end of the day is that this is something that you really have to manage, and is a responsibility of the firms that are actually in this type of space, to be responsible and have good governance, and to accept that when these things happen, that there is a responsibility to them to ensure that people are aware that this has existed, and not to brush it under the carpet.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, I found a question actually in the chat. The question is, commentators have said that the construction industry is ripe for more innovation. Have you seen successful applications of digital innovations that you can share besides digital twins? So particularly related there to construction.
Okay, I am going to bring it back to a digital twin, because I think in conceptual and detailed design, when you actually start using a technology that allows you to create a digital twin, you are actually starting during the conceptual design to generate what you can actually use throughout the life cycle of the design process, the construction process, and ultimately the operational process. So when it comes to using technology, I think you have to really look at what can it do for me. I'm unfortunately quite removed from the construction sector at this moment in time. But in saying that, is that if you see things like successes in new developments, and I'm going to use something like an airport. An airport may have been around for 75, 100 years, but they are physically have niched together or knitted together the use of scanning with greenfield developments. So where you have a terminal that is extended, they work with traditional processes, and they use digital processes to physically integrate and ultimately take that digital process and take it wider in their enterprise. I'm not sure that answers your question. I think it's one of those questions that one needs to really delve a little bit deeper, because construction is quite wide. But it is something I'd be quite happy to discuss further on a one-to-one basis if you would like that to happen.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Okay, I don't see any more questions in the Q&A, but maybe I've just got one I'd like to bounce off you, Bill. Was at the beginning there, you said of your digital twin project that you did in Central Europe. You know, obviously people are one of the most important things in the whole process. And when a project is starting, you know, people need to agree perhaps on setting parameters and what's expected, or what the deliverables of the project are, and who would set those deliverables in your experience? Who's that been? Okay,
so in this particular initiative, there was a strategy at the board level to want to move the organization into one location. They had something like 15 different buildings in the city, and they wanted everybody under one roof. The executives actually also wanted to uplift the organization to be classed as a leader in their field. They were in a let's say a non-environmental friendly environment. That was their main main focus of selling things that power your motor cars and your trucks and whatever. But they also wanted to realize the benefits of providing people with an environment that actually they wanted to work in and was world leading. They wanted actually the smartest building in the world. To do that, the executive management team, who were, let's say, the incubators of the idea, they physically went into the organization, and they spent a lot of time talking to people. They spent a lot of time identifying people to come into a team. And let's say the organizing committee for this project, just from a staff point of view, was over 50 people, where they got people from different buildings, they got people from different departments, and they were really the spokespersons that would actually interface with the actual team that were actually driving the project. And they took a lot of time and they took a lot of communication, and people sat with people to physically understand what the requirements were of the staff and try to marry those against the requirements of the business itself. As with all these things, there is no complete blueprint that you can say works for everything. There's a lot of lessons to be learned. There's a lot of mistakes are made. But at the end of the day is that if you can communicate and you can keep that channel moving, regardless of who the stakeholders are, it is paramount to make that project a success. And it is a success in that they delivered in the smart building all the things you would see traditionally, but they took a lot of time to ensure that the people had control over their building. And it was things like being able to sit at your desk and using a smart device, change the air conditioning, change the lighting, change the blinds, little things to be able to see how busy the canteen was at lunchtime, what was on the menu. All those sort of things were things that people could relate to, and they were things that people wanted, so they built them in. People could actually sit in the office and they could, through their smart devices, pick up exactly what was happening on the transport system. The building could book an Uber for them if they needed, or another rideshare company. So it really is very much, you've got to go big and you've got to extract the information you need. Otherwise you can actually, let's say, end up with an elephant that you really can't use.
Okay, thanks, Bill. We've got a couple of questions have appeared. The first slide on digital transformation mirrored almost exactly the standard concepts of change management. Concepts like C-suite buy-in, creating a sense of urgency, putting people first, etc. Is digital transformation any different from traditional change management? Is there any value in treating digital transformation as anything more than sound change management?
I think they complement each other. I think that the difference about digital transformation, though, is that you are trying to move, let's say, traditional digital ways of working into very different ways of working. And as opposed to just addressing a change over here, you are actually you're ripping open the business and you are doing some open heart surgery on it. And then you are going to wrap it up again, and it's going to be different. And it's very important that you focus on the digital impact you could say that digital impact is a portion of change management, but it's really a case of digital transformation is not just in your business, it's external, it's with multiple stakeholders, it's with your customers, it's with your suppliers. So that is where it is a little bit more complex, and it needs attention on its own. Change management process is part of it as well.
Okay, thanks, Bill. All right, I think I don't see any more questions in the Q&A, and we're pretty much at the end of our time slot for today. So I think we'll start to sort of wrap up the session. So first of all, I'd like to thank Bill, that's Bill Jones, all the way from Vancouver today, which is early morning for him, for the excellent presentation that he's just given to us, and to obviously to acknowledge the time and effort spent in preparing such a presentation. SAICE IT division greatly appreciates this. Also, I'd like to thank Debbie for making the arrangements for the organization of this webinar. So a lot of work goes into the background for setting all this up and making it all happen. And of course, to our attendees this afternoon for giving up your time, but I hope it was worthwhile, and I hope you've managed to learn a bit more about the data revolution and digital twin and other smart technologies. And finally, if you'd like to join the SAICE IT division and assist the committee, please contact us. You can do so via Debbie Besseling, and we'd be very happy to connect with you. Debbie's email address is debbie@saice, SAICE.org.za. That's debbie@saice.org.za. So I think now we'll wrap up, and to everyone to enjoy your evening, the rest of the day, and to Bill for enjoying your rest of the day, being from the morning for you and it's the evening for us. So from Johannesburg, South Africa, thank you very much, Bill, in Vancouver, and we wish you all the very best for the rest of your day. Thank you for attending.
Just before anybody just jumps off, Peter, if you don't mind, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me on my email address. I'll be most welcome to answer them and give you any help you can on the matter.
Bill's email address is actually on the screen, so before we close the meeting, I'll just leave it up there for 15 seconds, and you can see it's bill.jones@intervistas.com. Okay, so thank you very much indeed, everyone, and we hope to see you again on another of the SAICE IT division webinars. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Oh, thanks very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Peter.